Hi, this is Raquel from Embodied Presence Training. You can see that I'm doing this live in my car because I actually have an appointment. I've been driving between appointments today, which is why I wasn't initially sure what time I could do this live. So it's 2 o'clock Brisbane time, and I've got about 20 minutes before I can go on to my next appointment. So there's not a lot I can cover, obviously, on the issue of weight loss and healthy eating and the nervous system in a short live. But there are a couple of things that I think are really important to be considered on these topics. So I thought I'd just start by introducing some new ways of thinking about these things. So one of the things that I really want, most of us, I think, probably have some awareness of, at least. I've certainly heard it said many times before. People talk about, holding weight as a form of protection. And, I've heard that so many times, and I always knew it was very incomplete, and if not even incomplete, kind of wrong. So whilst there's this tiny little bit where it says, well, yeah, okay, maybe, that was how my internal response was that, yeah, okay, maybe, but, and what's the rest of it? What's the rest of the piece? So what we know, is that we put on weight, particularly around our middle, when there's higher levels of cortisol in our blood, or if we're actually not metabolizing that cortisol so well. So the cortisol may be being there may be a chemical signal that demands the cortisol is secreted in our body, and then the actual processing of the cortisol is not so as rapid as what needs to be. So then it can tend to leave some hanging around of weight and fat because there's more cortisol in our body than it's staying around for longer. So when you think about things like that, you would start to understand that there's probably a connection between cortisol and the nervous system, because we can understand that there's survival energies, the fight-flight energies produces these sorts of chemicals that are designed to keep us alive. And if there's more of those chemicals being produced in our bodies or being held or left in our bodies, and some of us actually have genetic predispositions to that. You can do a genetic test, albeit quite expensive, and you can actually determine whether there's a predisposition to higher levels of cortisol, and the predisposition is into the half-life of the cortisol. That can actually be determined genetically. So some people have this genetic predisposition to producing more cortisol, and also leaving it staying in their bodies for longer. But even those people who don't have that issue, don't have that genetic issue, if you're under any form of stress on a repeated, constant basis, it's more than just feeling your survival energies. That's actually contributing to the cortisol production in your body, which is contributing to your body having absolutely no inclination whatsoever to lose weight. All right. And what it also does is it tends to drive food cravings that are not conducive with healthy eating as well, which is really where I would like our focus to be more on those sorts of things than weight loss. But, I understand that people have goals. Now, I've had a weight problem all my life because I have some genetic predispositions to things, and I also have some leaky gut and various other things, and it's caused some problems. However, my desire has been, since I recovered from some really unhealthy eating patterns as a teenager, my desire has been to try and find a way to healthy eating again. But the cycle of, addictive foods and things like that has been really problematic. Sugar has been really hard to get off. Then what I can tell you for myself is late December last year, I suddenly stopped. I had no plan to stop eating sugar, but I just stopped. Actually, what happened is I stopped snacking between meals. And snacking between meals was because I have some real energy dips. Snacking between meals was kind of essential. And suddenly I stopped snacking between meals, which wasn't in the plan. And then what happened is through the stopping of the snacking, stopping of the sugar kind of came along really quickly and at the same time, more or less. And none of those things were planned. Then what happened really quickly after that is that I stopped eating carbs. And what I know is that my experience is not just a one-off experience. Some of you may have seen a comment by one of the ladies who joined my expansion training last round, and she has talked about how she's had similar experiences where without any plan or intention whatsoever, and this is what I want to say, we don't have to compel the nervous system to override what it's actually wanting to do right now. And if we can totally trust our nervous system and trust our body that what foods it is going for whatever crazy reason it appears to our logical mind, if we can trust that it is going for those foods because it thinks that it believes that those foods are the best possible choice it can make in this moment in time for whatever its nutritional needs are, then we can also allow the possibility that if we keep creating opportunities for change, some kind of change in our circumstances, rather than just waiting for us to wake up one day and feel like today's the day that we're going on a diet, or today's the day, that we're going to start exercising or whatever. It's about saying, what change could I make now that might support the possibility that my nervous system says, awesome, you've given me the conditions that I need to be able to make a change in my eating behaviors or a change in my exercise movement routine. So if we don't focus on the food, if we don't focus on the movement, but instead we focus on saying, well, obviously the conditions right now, whatever is going on in my life right now, somehow or another, one of those variables, and we don't usually know which, in fact it could be many, are responsible for holding these behavioural patterns in place that are keeping weight on or keeping me sedentary or anything like that. If we can actually say and give ourselves permission to be curious about the idea of, well, what could I change in my current circumstances that might actually lead to my nervous system being able to feel like it could wake up one day and make a decision to stop snacking or stop eating sugar or whatever. So instead of actually going directly at the problem, we actually acknowledge that the problem exists because we've created the circumstances and the environment to hold that problem in place. Okay? So this is a really, really, well, for a start, it stops focusing on the problem. And when we stop focusing on the problem, that's actually when the problem can go away. So it actually has, that's part of the inherent intelligence of working with the nervous system, is that what we actually want to do is not focus on the problem. We actually want to focus on what's working. So, if you're holding more weight than you would desire, or you're not moving as well or as often as you wish, or, various other things, then you maybe look at the counter of that and say, well, what am I doing well? And giving some attention and some focus to that. What am I doing well? What can I actually appreciate about myself right now? How can I hold myself in both compassion and appreciation and gratitude as well. But I think it's the appreciation rather than just simply the gratitude and compassion. We actually want to get to that point where we really appreciate that our body is intelligent and is really doing something that is looking after us and is protecting us. And it's that's the piece about protection. It's not that the body is protecting us by holding on weight. The body is protecting us to take care of us in the best possible way that it can. Everything is working well, and we know that it is working well. All right. So I did have another thing I wanted to, yes, I know what it is I wanted to mention. Just a sec, I can see that Rachel's posted a question here, so I'm just going to check this before I mention the other point. So Rachel has asked, is there a way we can support our body to process excess cortisol while we work on reducing our production of cortisol through nervous system work? I'm a nervous system specialist. I don't work in other areas. Maybe that's naturopathy, or maybe that's some other specialism. But nervous system work is the way that I would work on these things. So processing cortisol through other means, I couldn't really say. I can only really go back to the nervous system and say what we're really wanting to do is reduce both the sympathetic charge and also the collapse state in the nervous system. There's actually two states that are keeping the cortisol production going, and although they look like they're the opposite ends, they're actually both fueled by a nervous system charge or by a survival charge. So one is this the first one is the dorsal vagal state in the nervous system, and that's that kind of collapse or freezy kind of state. So you can probably imagine that if you're in that kind of freezy collapse state, there's not a lot of movement going on, there's not a lot of efficient digestion going on, there's just not a lot of efficient body function going on. So things like metabolism, metabolic processes are really not working so brilliantly. So you can imagine that what we want to do actually is help the client come out of dorsal vagal, out of their freeze. Okay, so that's what we were doing with Wendy, who was the lady who joined the last expansion training, helping her system come out of freeze. And as her system came out of freeze, she found that she was started to suddenly make better choices around food. She started to lose weight. She started to choose to exercise and want to exercise more. All of those things happened because her nervous system was actually out of the deep freeze that it had been in for quite some time. So that's one way of working, is helping somebody move up through the freeze and into a higher state of a higher metabolic state, if you like, or a higher nervous system state. The other thing, though, that most people aren't aware of is that if we're actually, a lot of people who over-exercise or who are in a sympathetic tone, they also may be doing this, healthy eating or weight loss goals an injustice. Because if they actually trigger a sympathetic and an ongoing fight or flight response in their body that doesn't calm down, then the cortisol production is going to continue. So when we exercise, when we move, when we just simply get up off our chair, we have a mobilizing energy that happens in our body that is connected to the sympathetic nervous system state. Now, sympathetic nervous system state is the fight-flight system. So, in its normal function, it helps us get off a chair. It helps us go for a walk, or all those sorts of things is perfectly fine and functional. But when it's used in a survival state, it's only intended to be used for a short time. Now, what can happen is if you do a lot of exercise or a lot of movement, it can actually be such a high and constant level of sympathetic nervous system state that it can actually trigger a survival response or a survival metabolism, and then you won't lose weight. Especially for people who haven't done a lot of movement in the past. So I remember working with somebody who had always been very heavy and been told that they were overweight and they needed to start exercise. And what she did is she started cycling, and she was cycling for 6 hours a day or something like that. And she lost weight initially, and then she stopped losing weight at all because it was actually too much for her system. And her system went into terror, fear, panic, because it was all too quick and too fast and too much hyperstimulation. So for some of us, all of us will have that to different degrees, but for some people, it can be extreme if they're actually having a lot of, if we're doing too much exercise or doing a lot of exercise. I'm hoping that, I just saw a couple of wobbles on my connection. I hope we didn't lose any connection there. So that's something to be really aware of. I mean, we could go into more detail on that, but I think you probably get the picture, and it's just a short little snapshot of what I wanted to talk about this issue. The last thing that is relevant to this work is around the vagus nerve. And what we know is that for any kind of eating behaviours to change, so this is more about eating behaviours than movement now, the nervous system to be in the state of what's called safe and social. Okay, it's a ventral vagus nervous system or nerve needs to actually be in a state, a ventral vagal state. And that means that we actually are out of sympathetic and we're out of dorsal vagal. Okay, so we're out of both those states. We're not in any form of survival or protection nervous system energy. Hi Tanya, yes, it's a long time, and thank you very much for for cheering me on. So we actually want to be able to encourage the nervous system to move out of any kind. We actually want to encourage the nervous system to feel relaxed. That's probably the best way, fastest, quickest way of saying it. Any kind of relaxation is more conducive to potentially changing your eating behaviors than anything else. Okay, because what we want to do is engage the parasympathetic nervous system, and then ultimately the vagus nerve, which is a branch of the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is a very specialized branch of the nervous system. It's not the same parasympathetic nervous system that you would get through doing yoga or doing breathing or various other things. It's a very specific branch of it. But if you're heading in the direction of parasympathetic activity, you're partway there. All right, then what you would do is you would add the social aspect to it, and to keep it safe, that could then actually bring the person into what we call a ventral vagal state. And that's the purpose of something like therapy or a group program or anything like that, because we can only get that state most efficiently through safe social engagement with other members of our own species. Basically, it's something that other species have as well, but it has to be done within members of our own species. So people, yes, I was just about to address that, Anna. Exactly. You can't do. Oops. I just lost my phone. You can't do ventral vagal with cats. So you can get some form of co-regulation with mammals, absolutely. Other mammals, you definitely get co-regulation, and so you'll get some things. They may actually bring you to, because especially if you talk to your animals, so it's possible to do a bit of that. You can, especially, like if you're really kind of using sort of vocal things, like if I talk to my cat, I'll go, you know, like, so if I were doing stuff like that with a cat and it was talking back and there was a lot of back and forth, then it's quite possible that that sort of thing could actually elicit the kind of vagal tone that we're after. We're biologically designed to do it with members of our own species, so that's actually our... Sorry, I'm holding a different... I now have to hold the thing because my thing to hold the phone has fallen off because it's so humid here. Can you hear me now? I'm like just holding the phone by an edge here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, okay, sweet. Sorry about that. So, yes, we're biologically designed to do it with members of our own species. That's our biology. But it is possible to do it with other, you know, domestic animals. That's actually part of it. This is the biology, Tanya. Like, we can't actually hack the ventral vagus nerve, right? We do our best, but we can't actually hack it. If we can't get social engagement, we can't get social engagement, but we can't actually get another form of it. Unfortunately, that's the case. That's probably why people have tried to actually get this same biological experience through online work. And that also is tricky because a lot of practitioners don't know how to do that online. So you actually need to be working with somebody who has some awareness of how to actually elicit and work with the vagus in an online space, because it's actually a little different than if you were in person. Similar but different. You actually just have to have some really kind of specific attention and about where your attention goes, and possibly focus on certain things to be able to make that a little bit more explicit to the nervous system when it's in an online space. So it's not exactly the same. Basically, if it were exactly the same, you probably wouldn't get it. So, you know, unfortunately, this is just a simple fact of our biology. And we do the best we can with what we have because that's what we have. But this is the ideal biology is formed through having the safe social contact and bringing the vagus nerve online, which then actually brings the ventral vagus state online. Okay, and so that's the one that will actually bring about changes into our biology that we may expect for around, you know, our food changing or other behaviors, even simply being able to stick to a resolution or being able to stick to you know, a program or a workflow or any of those sorts of things. A lot of people said recently, I'm finding it really, really hard to go back to work or get back into the flow of work. And that's partly to do with this. It's the same kind of thing, that when you actually have the ventral vagus online, it's really easy to return to habits even if you've broken them for a while. Right? It's only when you're constantly overriding and you're constantly having to use cognitive override to force yourself to do things that it's then hard to come back. But when it's come from a natural and organic state within your nervous system, you just go back to it. So, you know, in theory, you could, you know, eat a bag of sugary stuff and the next day you'll be fine. You may have a bit of a sugar hangover, and you may not. You probably would start, and this is my experience of it, you'd probably just start eating something sugary and then go, oh, it's actually not doing what it used to do. Seriously, it's just not doing what it used to do because something has changed in my nervous system. So this is actually what we're trying to do. It takes some time, but it's like, as long as we just keep focusing on the nervous system, then we don't actually have to focus on the behavior. The nervous system chooses what it's going to heal next, what it's going to work through next. It's taken me a lot of years to get to this place where finally my body has said, okay, I'm ready to let go of you know, the sugar addiction. I'm ready to let go of the carb problems. I'm ready to drop, you know, my, you know, being stuck on dairy. I'm ready to actually like have a really, really bad day and be highly emotional and just head for the salad section. Like, I mean, that was just bizarre, but it happens, and it's happened many, many times because it's a nervous system. Finally, if you give the body what it needs, you change the environment and you give the body what it needs. And I say, I didn't know what it was, but I kept changing my environment slowly, small things, subtle things, until my body said, thank you, that's what I needed. Okay, and that's what we have to really trust. Okay, and that's what it is about working with the nervous system. I think I may have to go. So I think that's probably all I need to do for today. There's, you know, like, it's a big conversation, this one. It's kind of why I don't really talk about it, because it's a huge conversation and it's a very emotional conversation for people, and people have a lot of, you know, a lot of desire on this one. And it's also complex and multi-layered. You know, we can't just say it's only the nervous system. It's not. There's more to it than that. But the nervous system is highly powerful and will make a big impact on whether it's easy, whether you're, you know, whether you're pushing against what your body wants, or you're. Okay, so I'm having some problems here because I'm running out of battery and various other things are going on. So I'm going to leave now, and just to let you know, there is one more spot in the expansion training. Somebody last time got some changes in their weight and in their exercise routine from just the 9-week training. So I'm not promising anything, but if that's where your body is, what your body is ready for, then it'll happen. Okay, so I'm holding that space because it's happening within me as well. So, you know, till 5 p.m. today, there you can still actually join the expansion training. There's 11 people in there now, so it's a wonderful number. But if you've been sitting on the fence, you've got a couple of more hours to choose to join. Okay, and you'll be most welcome. But I'm on holidays, so I will say goodbye and talk to you all soon. All right, bye bye.